Welcome back to another thrilling episode of the Blacklist Podcast. Today we're incredibly excited to welcome a guest whose voice has resonated through the realms of metalcore, Jesse Leach, the iconic singer of Killswitch Engage. This episode, along with a host of other inspiring stories, can be found at theblacklistpodcast.com. So get comfortable and join us for a deep dive into Jesse's life beyond the music. We'll explore his personal battles with depression, anxiety, addiction, and so much more. Without further ado, Jesse Leach. Jesse, man, welcome to the show, brother.
Hey, thanks for having me.
As I mentioned before, super stoked about this. Been a Killswitch fan for, long time, 15 plus years. And so my favorite metal band, I'm not saying that because you're a guest, I'm just saying in general, my favorite. So I've been trying, you're a hard guy to get a hold of. So I've been trying to get a hold of you for a while. It's probably been like over the course of the last year. And I think just through social media and whatnot. And I know you're not really like on social media, like too much. And, from, I don't know, you probably get a lot of messages too.
Yeah, I tend to avoid, I'm weaning myself off it. I'm actually getting ready to take a nice fast soon, but yeah, speaking of mental health, it can do a number on you when people just always want something from you. And as much as I really appreciate fans and people who care about what I do, especially when I'm making a record, I can't handle it as much.
Right.
Like
You're human.
making a record to me is my whole life gets turned upside down. So yeah, I am definitely I have been difficult to get in touch with.
Right.
Prior to that, I would check and I'd respond to messages. I'm doing that a lot less for various reasons.
I think I checked out one of your Facebook pages before and I seen, you had made a comment. You're like, I'm not really on here that much.
Yeah.
I'm not going to reach out to you, like warning people about spam and stuff like that. But yeah, I do notice, it's sporadic and that's fine.
Yeah, I don't think people realize how dangerous it is and how addictive it is. You get your dopamine rush, it becomes part of your morning routine. And as an artist too, it shortens your attention span. It's distracting. So it's a good tool to use. But if you're trying to make moves, if you're trying to be a genuine human being, I would caution people to limit your time and take breaks. I don't think people, it's like a foreign thing for people. Take breaks. Like you have no idea how amazing it is. If you stay off that thing for an entire day or, 3 days, put that thing on airplane mode, like, wow, you're going to start seeing things differently. You're going to start like watching people's body, like your whole aura, your whole mind changes. And I think we are severely lacking that in our society, that sort of contact that we need with other human beings. And being present is so valuable. So yeah.
I kind of say that to people. They're like, oh, why won't you accept my friend request? And I'm like, just because we're not friends on Facebook doesn't mean we can't be friends in real life.
Yeah.
I just want my personal life to be my personal life, and you're not coming into my personal life. I'm sorry. I'll talk to you about stuff, but you don't need to know my every move.
Yeah.
And people don't need to post their every move on there too. Privacy and anonymity is good.
Yeah. It's no, it's crazy. I got to take breaks every now and then too. Like a couple of weeks ago, I took a week off. I pushed everything that I did. My mental health, I realized it was burning out.
And what happened when you did that?
I don't know.
A lot of
felt
things
better.
A lot of things fell into place during that week.
Yeah.
A lot of things did.
Yeah. But we got to do it. But again, I appreciate Lyman actually hooking it up, because I found Lyman through the podcast he did with you guys several years back. And then I reached out to him and he came on the podcast and we had almost a 2-hour conversation. It was very good conversation. And since then we've talked every single day, and he's a good guy. And so I just told him, I was like, man, I appreciate you hooking it up. So anyways, appreciate Lyman. Thank you for coming on, man. And I'm excited to kind of just get to talk to you and kind of just get to know a little bit more about you, hear your story and kind of like just everything from music to everything.
Yeah, dig it. And shout out to Lyman. He's a good guy, man. I think he's one of the, when somebody sort of stumbles into something like he did live on our podcast, when he stumbled into his vulnerability, it was just, I would say it's a godsend because now he's on a mission. So I'm
Yeah.
super proud of that dude, and he's a good human. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm ready to jump into anything. I'm an open
Sweet.
book. I enjoy opening myself up. I think it's important to do so because people have these walls put up. A lot of people envision somebody like myself, a musician, to be a particular type of person. And I love dispelling the sort of rock star mythos because I can't stand that. So it's fun for me
Yeah.
to break down those walls.
No, absolutely.
And Jared knows a lot more about you than I do. I did, I jug around on the internet and YouTube and stuff like that. And I was just telling him, like, a lot of the stuff that I found about you is just music,
Mm.
promoting this or promoting that and stuff like that. And, people need to realize that you are a human at the end of the day and you function just like the rest of us and you feel just like the rest of us.
Mm. Yeah,
So,
people definitely take license and yeah, just just 2 days ago, someone tagged me in a message and I'm like, oh, okay, they're going out of their way to like get in touch with me, and I just happened to be in the app, in Instagram, and I click on it and it just says suck my dick. So like some
oh,
some people just
glad you read that.
so, yeah. And I'm like, I just start laughing. I'm like, it was so important for this person to say that to me. So, it can be something really deep as someone telling me that, your music saved my life. Thank you for being vulnerable, to like that kind of shit. So
Yeah.
it runs
Yeah.
the gamut. But I got amused by that. I'm like, I was kind of impressed that there was so much effort into that.
Just those 3 words.
Yeah. It's like, okay, cool.
I'm sure you get some wild shit when it comes to like messages and stuff. So
Yeah. What irks me is when people get personal and they know something about me and they point at it and it's like, oof, oof, like mean
mm,
spirited. I don't like that. That shit irks me because like I don't do that to people. I would never do that to somebody, especially someone I didn't know that well. But when you're out there and you're in a very popular band, um, and you're not the only singer, we swapped out between Howard and I. There are people who are so upset about that still,
mm,
that they have a vendetta against me without even knowing who I am. So that's a part of
right.
my existence that I've thankfully learned to deal with. But when I first rejoined, I was rough, man. I was getting hate from a lot of people.
There was a lot like, yeah, well, there was a lot of people like just everyone's gonna have something to say,
Yeah.
and it's just like, and everyone's gonna they point the finger and they're gonna say this or that, but they didn't understand what you were going through personally, like what you had to take care of in your personal life, and just everything that goes about it. They just go based on, oh, you fucking left and now we came back type deal.
Well, that's the problem. I think, people think they know, and there's a reason why you don't know. Because I think when you are in the public eye, you got to be careful what you share. Like we said at the top of this conversation, you got to be careful what you're putting out there. And I think that if you're being irresponsible about it and you're oversharing, then that's going to come to you. But if you're cautious about it and people still come at you, that's when you got to sort of like pump the brakes a little bit and not be so, I hate to say it, but I've had to develop thick skin about it where it
Yeah.
doesn't bother me like it could. That took some work for me because, you got to be secure in who you are. You got to love who you are. And I didn't always feel that way. I definitely had a good chunk of my life in a very dysfunctional relationship, which we can get into if we need to. But that tore me apart. And then prior to the divorce that I went through a rough time in my mind where, you look at your life, you think you got it figured out, and then it just crumbles. That does a number on your ego, your self-esteem. And there was a
Mhm.
time period in there where I was on the verge, and I'd actually had to go in and ask for help. And that was the first time I ever asked, a therapist to help me, which was a life altering thing. So yeah, I mean, that's all part of it. And I think people don't realize that with artists, with people who are there to express themselves, whether it's actors or, I think especially musicians and writers, because you're putting a bit of yourself out there. That's a tough thing to do. And that's why a lot of people who are creatives get into addictions and soothe their nerves and anxiety with drugs and alcohol. And that's something I'm familiar with too. So all of that is to be considered when you're dealing with interactions in social media, some people are sensitive. And if you're being mean spirited, you have no idea what the impact of that is on somebody.
Mhm.
So yeah, you got to be careful of that stuff. It's, people call internet bullying. It's real. It's real. That's why you got to know the push and pull. You got to know the balance and be
Yeah.
secure within who you are.
Yeah. I think, a lot of people, when you put yourself in the public eye, they feel like you owe them something. You should tell them everything about your life because you made this choice. Privacy is okay. Privacy is a good thing. You know, you don't have to put every detail about your life out there. And it really sucks that people think that that you owe them that.
Yeah.
You don't owe them anything.
Mm.
You're putting your emotions out there. You're not putting the last time you sat on the toilet, you know, if you had a fucking, if you got an ear infection, like you don't have to put all that stuff out there. It's
Mm.
just your emotions that you're putting out there. And the fact that you're putting it out there and people can, I'm going to say it again, shit on it is kind of horrendous,
Mm. I think
because I would
that's the
love for them
society
to
we
try
live
and
in,
be
though.
vulnerable. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that's
I
just,
see these people that are out there doing funny things on the internet or doing this, and like people are making fun of them. Why don't you try to do that? Like it
mm.
takes a lot of courage to put yourself out there like that. And to like belittle somebody for doing that is just, it's sick. It's sick to me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. So we we don't have to touch much on this, but like how did your childhood like affect you getting into music and I don't know at like what age that you started, going through addictions or mental health or anything, but how did your childhood contribute to that?
Can I throw something random out there real quick? Because I keep
Yeah,
thinking
He
about it.
always does this.
go
I'm
curveball.
so, I'm so excited that you're playing with Hollywood Undead.
Oh, right on.
Absolutely love them. And just like you were saying before, like when I bring up being a Hollywood Undead fan to people, they still argue about changing singers fucking 15 years ago.
Yeah, no, that's just
What they
how
did, they
fans
changed
are.
their tunes, 8 years ago. Like the first time I seen them in concert, there was probably 30, 40 people there. That's how long. I think I was 19 and I'm 34 now.
Isn't it great though that a band like that's still around, still going? I
Oh,
love
Yeah.
seeing
absolutely.
that.
Especially their story too, like where
Yeah,
they came from and where they are now. Like I'm even getting the chills right now saying that.
it's
But I
Yeah.
think
great.
that's really dope that,
I think that's what it's all about right there, being a fan of something like that and having that longevity and having those memories attached to the music. That's why to me, as somebody who, hasn't been the only singer of this band, I have to have a certain amount of grace. I really do,
yeah.
because people are they hold the music very sacred. And I do too, as a musical fan. I get it. I have a soundtrack to my life, and there are certain bands and certain artists that bring up certain feelings and memories that are precious to me. So I get that. But it's great though that you can still go see a band that you loved when you were that age and they're still
Yeah.
relevant, they're still playing, still putting on a great show, and you can still tap into that. That's
Yeah.
amazing. I love to see that. That's really cool.
I seen that earlier and it made me happy.
Yeah. It's hard for me to keep track because we play these festivals, we travel, and like that's news to me. I got to look at a poster and find out which show that is
Yeah.
because I don't know. I'm like, oh, cool. Got me.
Your name was right next to theirs.
Dig it. So
No.
yeah, music has always been in my life, as far back as I can remember. My father, in the '60s, was in a band called the Ovations. He was very much into the Beatles, and that who wasn't back then.
That's what I grew up with.
And then he became a born again Christian, um, and became obsessed with sort of God music. So 1970s Christian acoustic. Some of that stuff is hysterical, funny stuff. But I got a blend. But my what I was allowed to listen to up until a certain age was very limited because my parents had to make sure that the lyrical content fell in line with their faith. So the stuff that I got to hear was like Simon and Garfunkel, certain Beatles stuff. Certain Beatles stuff was like less,
Uh-huh.
I couldn't really listen to some of that
Little
psychedelic
touche.
stuff. Yeah. What else? The band, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and all that stuff was poetry. It wasn't just music. I would sit there and consume those lyrics. So, open up the old school vinyl and, can headphones on my ears. There's pictures of me as a a baby in a swinging rocking chair in the late 70s with can headphones on, falling to sleep to the Beatles. So my parents' music was just there from day one. I always remember the record player, the tube record player. Press the button and the needle would go boom, and it would turn on. And learning how to drop the arm on the vinyl from my earliest memories are just being around that record player. So that was the focal point of my childhood. I loved music from a very early age.
I think that's some pretty good music to grow up to because it had emotion to it, but it also left a lot to the imagination. You know, like it was very psychedelic and hippie-ish and stuff like that. And I think that's pretty awesome.
Well, it was poetry at the end of
Yeah.
the day.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, that is what got me first before music, before anything was poetry.
Mhm.
So I became a little poet. I started writing poetry. Oh, I don't know, silly poetry around 10 or 11. But then as the teenage years sort of crept on me, that's when I got intense with it. And that's when everything changed for me musically, lyrically. And that's when I started to experiment, with drugs. And
Mm.
that's when my life changed. So the era of like Nirvana, Pearl Jam, when that stuff was on the radio,
Yeah.
Pearl Jam's first record, Nirvana's
They
second.
still are.
Well, like when it started to,
Yeah.
when they broke into the mainstream, and that was the mainstream, that's when I was starting to get into punk and get
Mm.
into hardcore. And that music was introduced to me, funny enough, through theater kids. So I was in the school plays. I was into acting and theater, and that drama was my thing before. I love acting. I love playing a character. I used to do one-man shows when I was a kid, like laughter and comedy. That I always loved that stuff. So through that, I discovered punk music and hardcore music. Bands like Minor Threat, the Dead Kennedys, the Bad Brains, and reading those lyrics, and there was purpose behind it. It wasn't just poetry. There was a message there. So that's kind of what started to really pique my interest with music. And then at the same time, hanging out with punks and kids who were into hardcore, the Misfits, the Dregs, that's when, the drugs started to creep in. First, it just started with something like, simple marijuana, getting high on marijuana, having fun with my friends, just being a dork. And then fast forward to about a year later, and that's when I started to experiment with psychedelics. And that was an escape for me. And that brought me back. You can draw a line back from when I started experimenting with psychedelics to the Beatles, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, because the first time I ever took acid, I made the people I was hanging out with put that album on and listen to that song. And to me, it was a full circle moment, and it would open my eyes, and it was the gateway to everything. That, and that led down a dark path for a while there. But at that point, it was still fairly innocent, discovering music,
Yeah.
discovering girls, teenage years, innocent. And then, when you're dabbling in drugs and you're around crazy people who are into like crazy music, there's always the dark ones, and they always find the innocent ones and they corrupt them. And that's exactly what happened to me. I started to get corrupted by the people who could, they could almost smell you if you're around a bunch of people. When you're a
You
kid,
smell
you
the
kind of,
cleanest.
yeah, you also kind of know who's the dark one. You're like, you get the red on your ears. You get a little warm. You're like, ooh, this person's violent. This person, like, they just walk near you and you know that they're dangerous. But at that age in punk, you kind of like looked up to the dangerous people. So that's kind of what happened with me. I got involved with the wrong crowd, if you will. And to me, that was enticing too, being raised in a strict Christian home, going from that to like dabbling in what I was dabbling in. So to me, it was like,
How
I'm gonna
aware
go.
were your parents of this happening, these changes happening in you?
So they knew, I also had like the look. I started to change my look. I bleached my hair. I started wearing chains, at the time, Jinkos, baggy Jinkos and skateboarding,
Those
that
big
whole,
gaucho bands.
that was totally my thing. So they could see it happening. They knew that I was really interested in music, started to jam with a couple of guys, but I hid my addictions pretty well.
Yeah, I was gonna
I
say like the physical stuff that you were doing is probably clear to them,
yeah.
but like the other, the different music and the emotional stuff and all that, that's more things that we can hide from our parents.
Yeah, I think they kind of were clued in when I would come home smelling like weed, but I would just blame it on my friends. And
Mm,
I think
I
at a
tried
certain
that
point,
once. I got
yeah,
in
and I think at a
trouble.
certain point, my parents were like, bullshit.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I stuck with it. I'm like, no, I'm fine. Um, and around that time, my little sister was born. She was a surprise of the family. So part of my responsibility was to watch her. It was like my brotherly duty, which I loved. I loved hanging out with my baby sister. And we would watch, I would put on Alice in Wonderland and show her that. And then I would just start doing acid and like watching my sister and watching Alice in Wonderland. And it kind of made our relationship, her and I, special. But I definitely was on psychedelics for a while there when I kind of helped raise her and showed her punk rock. And some of that stuff still stuck, but I'm a
Mm.
little embarrassed. I was 15, but I'm a little embarrassed that I definitely would watch my sister while tripping on acid.
Yeah. I mean, you were a kid though, so
Yeah. Yeah.
she's alive, right?
I've
She's
never
alive
done.
and
Survived it?
she's alive and
Okay.
creative and
There you go.
thriving. So yeah.
I've never done like psychedelics. I've never done acid or mushrooms or anything. Now, I will admit I've always wanted to, but my anxiety would never allow me to because
Yeah.
I've always heard you get into a bad trip, like you just got to ride it through. And so I never experienced with that. So
I think I definitely enjoyed the psychedelics when I was younger and like
Mm.
still in school and stuff like that. But as I've gotten older, it's not okay with it.
Yeah, I think our bodies change. I can't
Yeah.
smoke weed anymore, even if I wanted to. Like, I just can't do it. I
Well,
can't do it.
especially the stuff that's out there now.
Yeah, it just doesn't sit well with me. And I think about existence and life, and it's never fun for me anymore. It's just
yeah.
I don't do it. I've cut back on everything. I'm not sober, but I'm one of those people that I can't lose control for various reasons. Number one, I don't want to. Number two, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. I don't want to be that jackass that says something and doesn't remember it. Like, so to me,
You
as
probably
I've
would have
gotten,
told that guy off.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, probably. Um, but I didn't learn that until I went down that dark path. And that's when, back then it was the rave drugs, in the 90s, punk and hardcore kids would go to raves. And instead of, just going to raves, I started to like dabble in selling. So I would get pain pills. We'd get, ecstasy was huge back then. I never really liked ecstasy, but I never messed with it. But to me, cocaine is when the darkness really started to enter into my friendship circle and the people that were introducing that drug and then getting into that drug, and you just feel invincible. And it was a small pocket of time where my life got dark, and that's when I started to do heroic doses of psychedelics and had that bad trip that you just talked about. I had
Mm.
one, and that sobered me out from all that stuff for 15 years after that bad trip. That bad
Yeah.
trip was, I to this day I'll never forget it. I saw shit, like it was dark because you're out with your friends, you're partying. My friend's like, "Hey, try this new acid. It's the original Timothy Leary acid, which is the original formula, which is very potent." Um, and anyone who's done acid knows you can't just do a tab and then do a tab. You have to increase your dose if you're doing it a lot. So I was at that stage where I was taking 3 to 4, and that was okay for me. I could take like that many tabs and not lose my mind. But they were blotters, which means there's 4 drops on each one. So it actually was 16 hits of acid.
And they
And
didn't tell you.
no, they
Oh,
thought
Oh,
it,
that's fucked up.
yeah, this one person who was the dark person in my life, who is now no longer among the living, thought it was funny. And that was one of the
great
scariest
joke.
nights. Yeah, great joke. That
Yeah.
was one of the scariest nights of my life. But you know what? It happened for a reason. And it really scared me straight for a long time. And, I learned a lot about myself. And during that time, too, had I not gone through that, I wouldn't have started to disassociate from that
Yeah.
type of person, all those people that were around me. Because I was in a band, singing in a band at this point, getting notoriety as a 16, 17-year-old kid still in high school, fronting a hardcore band that could play in front of 200 people. You
Mm.
start to get those people who are attracted and like want to be down with you and hang out with you. And that's, I was getting free drugs all the time. So had that not happened, I might have died, honestly,
Mm,
because
yeah.
some of those
I mean,
people moved on from cocaine to heroin. A lot of my friends started to dabble in that stuff. So I think that crazy trip saved me from continuing down that path.
I'm
Right.
big into looking for silver linings, so that's your little silver lining there. You know, it's a lesson to learn from everything.
So at what point what was that like right around the time where music like actually like took off for you?
Yeah. So around that time, my band was able to headline shows at the local Club Babyhead in Providence, Rhode Island, which was my CBGBs. People talk about CBGBs as being this thing for them. To me, it was Club Babyhead in Providence, Rhode Island. That was my CBGBs. I used to go to shows 3, 4 times a week there. My mom would drop me off before I had my license, and then once I got my license, I was driving there all the time. My band would headline there, and I'd go in the back room and I'd get $300 of cash in my hand at the end of the night. And it was like light bulbs were going off. Like, this isn't just for fun. Like, oh my God, I'm making money with this. So yeah, I think 16, maybe going on 17, still in high school, is when
Mm,
it got serious enough where my band would be handed shows. Then we'd invite bands. And then if a big band was coming through town, we were the opener. So that was my
mm,
life. Every weekend I was busy, and I started to get older friends, people who were in their 20s, and started to meet kids in the straight edge movement, which was a huge part of my life. For like a year, I went totally straight edge and got into that
I
whole
haven't
thing
heard
of,
those words in a while.
yeah. So the straight edge was huge in
Yeah,
that
yeah.
Providence northeastern scene for, I'm talking like 93 to like 98. The straight edge bands, like, that was a huge thing. And I thought that was cool because it showed me that you could be empowered by being opposite of what was considered cool in high school, and that became a whole thing for me. It was like, I want to be the anti thing. So anything that was
mm.
like more niche or more like, I was into it. So I started into bands that nobody listened to, and my love for music took over everything. Nothing else mattered. It didn't matter what was going on in my life. Music became my drug over anything.
Yeah. What was your mental health like? Like, was that
Mm,
something you had struggled with, or did you not
I
really?
I had I was always one of those people who would have big mood swings, very sensitive. I wanted to be liked, people pleaser, without, I didn't even know what that word was. I had no idea. Had anxiety, didn't know what that was. But, when you're that age, and for me, partying as much as I did, I was clouded over with drugs and alcohol for so long that I didn't know how bad it was. But I could say that, I definitely struggled with anxiety and depression without knowing that's what was going on with me back then.
Right, right. How did your once you started breaking out and like these headlining these shows and with your bands and stuff, like how did your parents coming from how did they feel about it coming from how strict they were and whatnot?
My mom, God bless her, was supportive. She actually would come and sit at the bar outside the pit, and the bouncers would stand near her to protect her. Like, she wanted to support her son. My dad didn't care for it. He thought it was a waste. I think he wanted to support me, and he thought it's just a phase. But, as any parent would, I get it. He wanted me to go to college. This guy is he went from being you know, a hippie biker to someone who had 2 master's degrees and eventually would get a PhD. So to him, his way out of his life and the drugs and everything that he did when he was a kid was learning school. It was God and it was school. So he wanted me in the church every Sunday, which I was, even if I didn't want to be, I was there. And he wanted me in college. So he didn't really see eye to eye with me on this music thing until it started to make somewhat of a living, which would come years later. But my mom, diehard from day one, she was always there supporting me, being like, you do what you got to do, which was huge.
That's good. You know, like I said, it's always hard. Like as children, you know, we want that support from our family, from our parents and whatnot. And um, I mean, at least you had one of them supporting you. You know, like die hard supporting you.
Yeah. I think I would have done it no matter what. I
Right.
couldn't, I was so, it was everything to me, you know. And I was actually empowered a little bit, you know, because when you're a kid, you're like punk rock, like fuck you, dad. You know, I was empowered by the fact that he wasn't kind of into it. Um, which would change later in life, but at that time, it just didn't matter what anyone said.
Right.
I had to be there. I had to be, you know, and not even just with punk and hardcore. I would go to death metal shows. I'd go to goth shows. I'd go to industrial night. I would just go. I wanted to consume everything. Music was just my addiction for
Yeah.
sure.
Now, and we're going to kind of jump forward really quick before we go back. What about now? Like, how's the support now? Like
Oh
as an
man,
adult, like where you're at
incredible.
your career.
My parents are so supportive. Um, my dad wears my sweatshirts. My whole family really wears all the gear, and you know, my dad will send me pictures when he's traveling. Oh, I met these guys in the airport. They're Killswitch fans, you know, we'll be out together somewhere and like, do you know my son? My son's in a band. And I'm like, Dad, no, no. It's adorable, man. Yeah, I get along really well with my parents now that we're all grown. And
I bet
they're
you they never would have expected it to get you to get as big as you are.
no, I don't think I would. I didn't either. I had no idea. To
Yeah.
me, that's not why I was doing it. You know, I did it for the love of it.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't my main thing, I'd still be doing it. I'd still
Right.
be, you know, going down the street to the local pub and playing. I would do it no matter what. I'd be in a punk band or a metal band right now if I wasn't in Killswitch.
Right. Right. So then going back, so after, how did the music I mean, how did you get to where you're so at 15 years, was that like abstinence like 100%, like nothing, or was that just like psychedelics like that kind of shied you away from all that?
So it was a good maybe 6 months of absolutely nothing.
Okay.
And then weed came back, and weed was always my comfort back then. It didn't make me lazy. It wasn't the typical thing for me. It was actually a creative thing. I liked it because it calmed my anxiety and it made me creative. So I was smoking, you know, a couple times a week, and then weekends I'd go to parties, and to me it was I might have a beer here and there, but it was always weed up
Yeah.
until like my 30s, like weed all the way through my
Hmm.
30s
I
until,
mean,
you know,
I don't even think weed's a bad, in my personal opinion. Like some people can't do it, but if you can do it, I'd rather have you smoke weed than be on all this pharmaceuticals, in my
yeah,
opinion.
or alcohol, you know, alcohol can
Yeah.
be much worse than weed. But you
Yeah.
know, I think it depends on the person too, because I do know people that people may chuckle, are actually addicted to weed. Like they can't not do it. And I think
I used
that's where the problem is. If you can't live without this thing, it's a problem.
Right.
I used to be like that. Even my mom knew, like, if I haven't smoked yet, don't talk to me. Like, don't talk to me until I smoke some weed.
Yeah. I mean, people like
You
that
know?
with coffee, you know, and
Yeah.
people may
I was like that. It was a
chuckle
long
about that
time
too,
ago.
but coffee is the same thing. Coffee is
Yeah.
still technically a drug, but you know, to me, it's not harmful. You're not going to like disown your family for coffee, but or weed. But
Right.
we chuckle, but it's true. Like everyone's got something, you know, and I
A
think
vice.
as long as your vice isn't destroying you,
Mm,
then I think it's okay. But it's also good to have a healthy vice.
right.
And my healthy vice is exercising in nature. That's my all-time what liberates my soul and brings me back to my body and levels me out is moving in nature. And if you're on my Instagram or any of my social media, you'll see that that's my biggest now is aside from music, nature is my biggest addiction, I guess you could say.
Yeah. No, like I said, it's always good to have something healthy. You know, I don't know. For me, it was music. I've been writing music since I was like 13, 14 years old. Like that's my therapy. That's what I do. Even though I don't like actively record, you know, like I used to, that's my that motorcycles. Like that's my
Nice.
addiction. I ride, you know, I moved out here last year. I'm from Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona originally. So I was used to being able to ride my bike year round. And then when I moved out here and I was like, I gotta put this away for the winter, like, what the hell? So then I was like, what the hell am I gonna do to like what am I gonna do? And then of course the podcast keeps me completely busy.
Mm.
Um, it's like I don't even have to go to meetings anymore because I sit 4 times a week and I talk to other people, and that's kind of like my own meeting.
Yeah, podcasts can be good therapy if you're talking about stuff like this. I agree. When I was on a regular basis with Matt and I, our podcast, Stoke the Fire, which is currently on hiatus because we're just both way too busy doing, I mean, our lives have been completely busy. But that, when we had that on a regular basis, yeah, you're right. It feeds your soul. It's therapy to
It
talk about
does,
it. And
but you can get burnt out.
yeah, absolutely. As with
I'll just
anything.
edit that.
I broke the chair.
I didn't
Yeah.
hear it.
Sorry,
Oh,
I had to step away.
Oh, you're good.
yeah, you do get burnt out, and not even that, too, not even just getting burnt out because of working, but because of the shit you're talking about. Like let's be honest, like yeah, we like to talk about where we came from and where we're at, like what we're doing in our life to be a better person and for our community and this that, but it's like you start talking about this shit all the time and it just gets draining.
It is because, you're empathetic to it. If
Yeah.
you're in the conversation and you're present to it, of course it's going to affect you. There's a few episodes on Stoke the Fire that Matt and I did where we would finish the episode and him and I were like, kind of had to check on each other. We text each other back and forth, like, you good? Like, I'm still not good. Like, that was heavy.
Yeah.
When you hear people talk about abuse, dark addiction, suicide, like any of those topics
Mhm.
that come onto the table when you're doing stuff like this, it's tough, and you need to make sure that you're taking time for yourself and talking to other people about it. That's why they always say
Mhm.
like a therapist should have a therapist. If you're doing a
Mhm.
podcast like this that deals with that, you need to talk it out with people too. You
Yeah.
can't just tough it out and roll on through. You got to be honest
Mhm.
with yourself.
Jared's a lot better at that than I am. There's a lot of times where I can't. I just cannot handle it. Like
Yeah.
my emotional threshold is already overflowing for the day. And as much as I love sitting down and having back and forth conversations with people, I just can't some days.
I
Just
get it.
absolutely
Yeah.
can't.
Yeah, she'll be like, I can't do it today. And I'm like, I get it.
Sometimes I'll sit on the couch and like, say stuff to him and everything like that, but being involved in it, I just
Yeah. Like when Lyman was on, like, dude, that was deep. Like that one, that was, I mean, like he was
I sat
he
out
was
that one and I don't know how I would have been able to handle seeing
he
him
was
cry. I would have been
crying
sobbing.
and like by the end we were just like both of us, we were just like, holy shit, like the fact that it got as deep as it did. And I think that's why I connected with him so much on an emotional level. Like we texted each other every single day since he's been on, and like we've built this relationship. And it's like I told him, I was like, I don't always vibe with people, like especially with the amount of people that come on. Like, we have all kinds of people that come on the show, but I was like, you're someone I want in my life. And he goes, nah, like 100%. But that was a tough one. Like but he was still like, man, I'm still feeling it. Like I still from having to be vulnerable and emotional. It's just like, but he was scared to like let loose and be vulnerable, like he was when he was on your guys' show. But the reception that he got from it was just like, I mean, we had one real hit like 225,000 views on Instagram, and it was like, and he's like, I'm still getting messages like every single day. So
Mm.
that's when like what we're doing is an impact. Like we're making, and I'm sure it is like when you get messages, for about how much your music saved, their life and whatnot. Like that's when you're like, I get burnt out and I
Mm.
can be emotional, but I know I'm right where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah, it's true. It gives you purpose, and I know what I'm doing, has mileage because people remind me of that. It's easy to lose sight of that when you're touring constantly, when you're thinking about your career and all those other things that come with it. But I'm constantly grounded by fans, people who take the time, whether that's, via messages or, to me, more importantly, in person. I try to make myself available when I'm out on tour. You know, I'm pretty accessible. I go for walks. I don't hide in the backstage area. If I go out to the bus and there are fans nearby, I go to them. That kind of stuff to me fills me up. But you know, it's I think the theme that we're touching on here throughout the past, 10 minutes or so is finding balance. And I think balance is key and you can come to that in your life with wisdom. It's not something that you're just going to figure out. You need to have conversations about it. You need to learn about yourself. You need to sit with yourself. And that's one thing over anything I'd say these past few years, even for me. It's been very much about, as I said earlier, I don't do anything to excess. If I'm going to go out to dinner, have a couple drinks, that's it. I need to stop there. And thankfully, I've been able to do that because I can't numb out anymore like I used to when I was younger. And even in my career with Killswitch, like there are definitely nights on tour years ago where I was just numbing myself because I couldn't handle things. I don't do that anymore. And since I don't do that, I've learned who I am. I've sat with my pain. I've sat and I've actually realized deep wounds that I have from childhood that I've recently come upon because I'll take a month off. And, January, my lady and I were like, January, dry January, let's do it. And not just do it and like zone out on a TV and like do the work, sit with yourself. Why am I having this mood swing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But then knowing when to go, okay, today I can't do the work. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to watch, South Park and like veg out and laugh and like be light because I can't go deep today. You have to know the push and pull. You have to know balance. Balance is very much key when you're talking about maintaining a clean lifestyle or, being honest with your mental health. You've got to have push and pull. You can't be a hero, a mental health warrior and do it all the time. You really need to be careful and give yourself grace.
Yeah.
I always say being selfish is kind.
Yes.
Giving yourself that space, your time, whatever you need, like listening to yourself, because it is a lot to take that armor off, deal with something, and then you have to put it back on. And sometimes it's not that simple.
Yeah.
It takes a toll.
Yeah. So how did you graduate from 16 punk band to headline to Killswitch and Times of Grace and all that? How did all that come up?
It's a long, slow, arduous process of just getting in the van and getting on tour. When I was 17, I went on my first tour, if you will. It was only a couple shows, but driving from Rhode Island to Virginia to play a show, driving up to Canada. So, I'm just fresh out of high school, traveling, getting in the van, selling t-shirts, selling cassette tapes and CDs, seeing how that worked, cutting my teeth on that, being the baby in the band. I'm in a band with a bunch of 20-year-olds, like seeing how that works, meeting other bands, filling up notebooks with people's phone numbers, getting out your MapQuests, your atlases, and getting on the payphone and talking to the promoter. Like I learned all that shit when I was in my teens into 20s. Like, how does this work? Do it yourself, pre-internet. That really is what gave me the drive to go, okay, this can be done without a record label. You don't need a record label. You don't need none of that. It was just us kids, if you will, doing our own thing. And that's where I come from, the ethos of DIY. So weekends, I'm coming out of high school with a messenger bag on with, 200 copies of a flyer from my band with a staple gun. And I'm going around town and I'm putting up, we're talking old school here. I'm putting up flyers. I'm going to the rec center where the kids hang out. I'm literally wherever I'm going, I'm putting a flyer or I'm putting a cassette tape in your hand and I'm marketing. I didn't even know what marketing was, but I was marketing myself in my bands, and people got to know me through that. My live shows, they got to know me as the kid in that band, Corinne, and that rep to this day. There's still people that remember that band and remember me, and I was just hungry. So I worked my butt off, and then people would see my work ethos. And that's when I met Adam D. from Killswitch, who wasn't in Killswitch at the time. He was in a band called Aftershock, and playing shows with bands like Aftershock and Overcast. Those are two bands that are pre-Killswitch Engage. Rubbing elbows with these guys, playing shows with these guys. You become part of a scene. You see each other in New Jersey, New York, New Hampshire. The networking, just, that was everything. And then from there, meeting Adam, and Adam had this side project with Mike from Overcast, and they were looking for a singer. It was just going to be like a casual thing. So, I showed up to try out and audition to be the singer of this project that happened to be Killswitch Engage back in 1999. And then from that point, in the next year and a half, that band blew up. But again, had nothing to do with anybody but us. Just
Right.
getting in the van, playing shows,
Grinding.
promote. And then enter Roadrunner Records, and then boom, it blew up.
Blew up.
Yeah.
How did you come up with the name Killswitch Engage?
Mike D did, and I believe it was from an X-Files episode. At least that's how the story goes. And I love
X-Files was huge then too.
It was, and it's funny because my parents used to watch it, and I was always like, not my thing. But years later, I became obsessed. I love that show now. But yeah, at the time, I was like, I don't get the reference. Whatever. Who cares? Sounds cool.
Yeah. No, it's cool. Like, it's catchy. That's one of the things, even like now today, everybody's got a band and everyone's doing music, and it's, you gotta find a name that's gonna stick too, like, because before, even just a set lyrics aside, people hear a shitty band name, they're not gonna want to listen to it. So
Unless
mean,
you're a grindcore band or a death metal band, then the worse your name is, the better it is.
True.
So so obviously we knew, you had some issues, and you had to take what, 10 years? Was it 10 years?
9 years.
9
Yeah.
years off. So how was that transition, man? Like blowing up into this band, and then the next thing having to take that time.
Well, that happened for a reason. That's when my mental health started to really show up in the form of social anxiety, in the form of depression. That first, because I left Killswitch, we were still a baby band. We were the opening slot on a death metal tour, a band Hypocrisy, which, we sound nothing like. The tour didn't really make a ton of sense. I bailed after that first big tour because I couldn't handle it. Number one, I didn't have vocal training. I was just going up there every night screaming my guts out. And number two, I had severe social anxiety. It's funny because I would be at other people's shows advertising. I'd be at parties, and off stage, fine. When I had a show to do, the time that it led up to me going on stage, I was nauseous. I was sick. And then I'd play the show and I would leave. So anytime my bands would play, I would show up, play, and leave, or just go to the backstage area and like disappear. I couldn't handle people, and I didn't know why that was. So when I left Killswitch, it was a compound issue that came to a head, and that's when I had my first real breakdown, my first real depression, where it lasted for years. This isn't some passing, oh, I'm depressed today. Ugh. No, this was debilitating, to the point where I didn't realize how bad it was till a year and a half, 2 years later, when I came out of it and looked back and was like, wow, I don't even know who that person was. The person that quit Killswitch Engage, I don't even know who that was. I was in such a dark, weird place, because people are starting to recognize you. You're showing up to the show, the van door opens and people are looking for you. And I'm like, who are these people? I've never had this happen before. In punk and hardcore growing up as a kid, everyone's in a band, everyone's hanging out. It's part of the scene. You're not a rock star. That's when I first started feeling like a rock star, and I was super uncomfortable with it. So yeah, there was a compound reason of me leaving, and that was part of it. Had I not done that, though, I wouldn't have grown. I wouldn't be the person that I had to become. Again, serendipity, or a higher power was looking out for me for sure, because I was on a suicidal path at that point and didn't have the language for any of that stuff still. And that was my journey into other bands, and then
Yeah.
eventually getting back on the road again and becoming a full-blown alcoholic at that point, where alcohol was like, I sort of, it's sort of like I was late to the alcohol thing. In my teens, it was eh. And then as I started to deal with stress and anxiety, that was the only thing that really took the anxiety away, was alcohol. So alcohol became my favorite thing. And
Yeah.
I was a booze hound for a long time there.
Really?
It helps with those inhibitions.
Yeah, and gives you a false sense of bravery, and like,
Yeah.
those were the days where I would say and do shit that I don't remember, and people thought it was hysterical, and
Yeah.
I did too for a while.
And like you said before, you always wanted to be liked. And I think a lot of people drink alcohol and it makes them feel liked, because you're more, at least for most people, some people are extremely introverted when they're drunk, but, you put yourself out there more.
Yeah.
You're doing stuff that you normally wouldn't do. You're talking a lot more and stuff like that. So it makes you feel liked.
Yeah,
At,
it's dangerous.
Yeah.
at what point were you like, all right, I got a problem. Like and like, what was the mentality to change that?
I I I didn't see it as a problem for a long time. Um, I took pride in being those people out that are drinkers. They like love to drink. I was proud of it. I was a whiskey man, like, drink my whiskey, listen to the rock and roll blues. I was in a band called Seamless, not too long after leaving Killswitch, and that was like blues rock. That was a bar band. We would play for tabs and then eventually start making money. But to me, it was, drink. I was going out with my boys and drinking whiskey and having fun. So I was proud of it. I was a proud boozer. I was like, yeah, rock and roll and whiskey, right? Yeah, for years with that band.
Mm.
I didn't see a problem. I wouldn't say that I realized I had a problem with alcohol till I was back in Killswitch Engage.
Okay.
So you're talking 2004 to about 2007. I was in Seamless touring again, back on the road. Come home from tour, work a job I hated. Weekends were my time to like play with my band and drink. Um, yeah, I had to pump the brakes when I was drinking a bottle of tequila a night and feeling like I was sober.
Okay.
That's when I was like, wait a second. Not only am I not getting the buzz that I'm looking for, but like my body's starting to really get affected by this,
Hmm.
That's when I knew I
Yeah.
had a problem. And
I
that's
was a big
it's
drinker.
sad, but it's true. It took me to that. And that didn't happen till, we're jumping way ahead. I'm talking like
Mhm.
2014, 2015.
Yeah.
So booze was prevalent
Over a
for
decade.
my life. Yeah, pretty much. That was my
Yeah.
social lubricant, best friend. My best friend was alcohol.
So how did the guys take it when you told them you were leaving the band initially?
Ha. I mean, not good. But I was an escapist. Again, people pleaser, want people to like me. I knew they weren't going to like this, so I hid.
Mhm.
I'm so dumb. I emailed them. It's so bad. I left that last show, had my brother pick me up. The last show was in Seattle. My brother was living in Seattle at the time. I had him come pick me up at like 10 in the morning from the parking lot, disappeared, didn't even say goodbye to anybody. I was that broken and damaged and dark. I couldn't even face, and cowardly. I couldn't even face those guys. So from there, getting home, sending an email out to the band and the record label management, I'm done. I'm completely done with music. At the time, I was like, I didn't know what to do with myself. I think I had said I was going to become a missionary or something. I don't know. I used some excuse. And,
You probably could go back and find that email.
oh no,
Yep.
it's in Hotmail. I don't do Hotmail anymore. I don't know. Um, yeah, so that really was a huge divide for us as friends, and we weren't even
Mhm.
super tight. We were kind of just all in bands together that
Yeah.
formed a super group. So we weren't, it's not like I grew up with these guys. So I didn't feel that bad about it till years later, but
Right.
they were definitely bitter until they found their replacement, and then things got better real quick because the success of that band exploded. So it kind of Howard Jones kind of took me off the hook with those guys.
Shout out to Howard.
Yeah, he saved he saved the day.
He's man for a black guy, he's an amazing vocalist. Like, oh my gosh, that dude can sing. I can tell you that.
Well, he
I'm gonna
changed.
step in real quick and excuse myself. I'm switching meds, and my hands are sweaty, my feet are sweaty. I keep getting nauseous.
Oh yeah,
So
do your
I am
thing.
going to. Sorry,
Okay.
I've been trying. I'm gonna
Do your,
go, step away,
She's
drink some
changing
cold
her
water.
Yeah, do
changing
your
some
thing.
mental health meds.
I'm getting off
so.
of. I'm decreasing one med and getting onto another medicine right now.
I get it. Yeah.
And today's day 2 of it, and like I'm sitting here like I feel like I have my hand in a bucket of water.
Yeah, dude. I love the honesty.
So
Absolutely. Go do your
I'm gonna
thing.
go,
No
you
worries at
know,
all.
get myself some more water and go stare at him awkwardly from the couch.
Yes, I love it. Do
I'm
it.
sorry.
No, you're fine. I totally get it.
I have to. That self-awareness now
Yeah,
is I have to be aware of everything.
that's good.
And me sitting here, I'm gonna stare off and I need to go lay myself down for a little while.
I get it. And I think people
So,
listening will appreciate that.
yeah.
I'm sure
Yeah,
people
I'm
are.
leaving this in. I'm not even going to edit this part out.
That's I've done it
I'm sure there
before.
are people who are going to be nodding their heads right now, going,
Yeah.
"Yeah, I get that."
The first time I left, I threw up, and then I got a phone call that gave me more anxiety, and now it's getting worse. So
Real
go lay
talk.
down.
Do your thing.
It was wonderful sitting down with you.
Likewise.
So
All
Dig
right.
it. Dig it.
Yeah,
I commend her for her openness. That's good.
I got to support her. Like I said,
You
she's
do, yeah.
changing her medications and whatnot, and she's doing what she needs to do for her.
Yeah,
So
that is not easy. I get it. Yeah, so thankfully Howard Jones stepped in, and then that liberated me. And Adam D and I always maintained friendliness, and Joel as well. Mike and I, it took a little while to patch up, but once that band started to see success, and I started to show up here and there to their shows to
Mhm.
support them, we mended that pretty quickly, which was a blessing for me. And it also
Yeah.
made me realize the way that I left was wrong.
right.
It made me realize a lot about myself. And that was kind of
Yeah.
the first time where I was able to take a hard look at myself and realize that what you do in your relationships with people affects them the way that I affected them. Because now that we were friends again, I got to hear how I affected them and
Yeah.
how I was being selfish and not speaking about what I was going through. So that was a huge awakening for me back then.
Was there, in all honesty, was like there any point when you'd seen how much they blew up with Howard? Was there any like form of regret that you had stepped away, or did you know you made the right choice?
I knew I made the right choice. I think that I probably would have ended up dead.
Yeah.
I just couldn't handle it. I was
Right.
suicidal. And you know what? A lot of people don't know how dark it got for me. I was absolutely suicidal on a pretty regular basis. And it didn't help that I was in a relationship, a marriage at a very young age to a very toxic individual that was also a raging alcoholic. Worse
Worse
way
than you,
wor-
huh?
way worse than me. And like she would hide how bad it was. I didn't know how bad it was. Like she was so good at hiding how bad it was. So
Yeah.
we had a toxic relationship for 18 years.
Mm.
And a huge part of my mental health was because of that relationship, like the downfall of me. But, also the muse of a lot of the darkness that I wrote about in, Times of Grace, Kill Switch. Yeah, a lot of that relationship and my dealing with my brain and my mind and alcohol and drugs was all tied in to all of those songs.
Yeah.
So, as a musician, you have to take that stuff and use it. It's for better or for worse. Everything that I write
Mhm.
in my bands is a direct, result of the way that I'm seeing the world and myself.
Yeah.
So it's a blessing in disguise,
Yeah.
I guess.
That's exactly what you would call it. How did the conversation come together about having you come back? Did you reach out to them? Did they reach out to you? Like, how did that go?
yeah, so we had developed a friendship, and I'd come see them play here and there just to check it out, and cheer them on and be like, "Wow, you guys are getting huge. This is nuts." And then I remember, I'm not going to put a time frame on it because it might make it awkward, but there was a point where we're all out drinking, um, and they basically said to me like, "We'd love to have you back at some point. Things are starting to really fall apart with us and Howard. Things aren't good." And I was like, you know what, dudes, like where I'm at in my life right now, like my band at the time was doing decent. I had a pretty good job. I thought my relationship was doing well. I was like, I don't know if I need to do this. And I can't imagine singing somebody else's songs. It just didn't
Right.
feel like something I could do. So I turned that down, and fast forward to Howard leaving and that whole fallout. I got reached out to again, and I was like, I still don't know. And let me backpedal here. That second time was when Times of Grace just started to get going.
Mm-hmm.
So Adam had reached out to me, said I'd written this record. It's not a Killswitch record. I'd love to work with you. So we were working on that behind the scenes while Killswitch is starting to have real major issues. And then when, Howard left, the question was posed to me, now would you consider coming back? And I was like, in the back of my mind, like, no, like I want to keep Times of Grace going. Like Times of Grace is my shit. Like this band's great. But Killswitch is a legacy band. It's not going to go away. So Adam was like, look, I like what we're doing with Times of Grace, but I do have to figure this Killswitch thing out because Killswitch is the legacy band. It's a band that
Mm-hmm.
we worked really hard to get where we are. We're not just going to stop doing this.
Right.
So Times of Grace can continue on as a side project, but it can't be the main thing. It's not. We didn't, we didn't make the money we needed to make to continue touring. Touring is expensive. Times of Grace was not making that kind of money. So I was like upset, but I got it. I
Yeah.
got why they needed to continue on. So yeah, when the question was posed to me, I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not. I'm good. I'm gonna rest on my laurels with Times of Grace, which led to
Yeah.
me, getting a bar job and just being a normal person for a while there. And then I heard they were holding auditions for a singer, and I'm like, oh no, this is a mistake.
Yeah.
A third singer coming into the fold. This is not going to
Yeah.
be. It's not going to bode well for these guys. And I remember working it's a very vivid memory. I've talked about it many times where I'm behind the bar in the West Village in Manhattan, and a fan walks in and is like, "Aren't you the guy from Times of Grace and used to sing for Killswitch?" I'm like, "Yeah. What are you doing here?" Like cleaning glassware, behind the bar. And I'm like, it really hit me. And again, serendipitous, higher power, whatever you want to call it, right around the time when they were holding auditions for a new singer. So after that shift, I went out drinking with my bartender friends. I got hammered and ended up calling my old manager and be like, hey, put me on the audition list. I want to be the last guy in the room after you audition all these people. I want to be the last guy on the list, and I'm going to give this a shot. I'm going to do it. So I had 2 weeks to learn like eight songs, eight of Howard's songs, and sing a bunch of
Mm-hmm.
my old ones. And long story short, it clicked. We clicked. When I got into that room with those guys,
Yeah.
it was so much fun. We were all
Yeah.
smiling, having a great time. And yeah, as they say, the rest is history.
The rest is history. Man, I tell you, when you guys did Signal Fire, like I was not expecting Howard to come out. Like I was not expecting you guys to be on that same record together.
Yeah, I thought that was important to do all those years later, and there's a whole complicated story about, it had nothing to do with me. It had very much to do with the inner workings of Killswitch sort of mending their relationships with each other and with Howard. That took some time. It really
Yeah.
did. And I commend those guys, all of them, really. I commend all of them for not airing dirty laundry on the internet, for not trash talking. They were all class acts about it. And, as you get older and wiser and you see life differently, some of that petty stuff that you cared about when you were younger doesn't even matter anymore.
Right.
So once that was all said and done, and Howard showed up to a show in Canada, and I got to actually hang out with him for the first time. Because prior to that, to me, he's already been the singer from Blood Has Been Shed, and then the guy that took the Killswitch position. I respected him. I knew him as a guy that I would see around in the scene.
Yeah.
But he wasn't my friend. I didn't know
Right.
him. And that was the first time I actually get to sit down with him and get to know him. And that became semi-regular. For around where he would live, he would come out. And then eventually it was just like, well, shit, man. Why don't you sing End of Heartache tonight? Getting ready to go on stage with Iron Maiden. He's in London doing press. And I was like, just brilliant idea of like, holy shit,
Yeah.
we've never done this. Why don't you just jump on stage and sing End of Heartache? And he's like, okay.
Yeah.
And then as we're working on Atonement, that song came up. I wrote the song, and in the back of my mind, I'm like, I'm gonna have Howard on this song. The song is
Yeah.
about unity, and I think it would be special for the fans to see officially that there's no bad blood. All the rumor mill that everyone loves to get involved with.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, it was Howard versus Jesse, and why did Howard leave Killswitch? Did he get kicked out? Blah blah blah. All the nonsense. I had the idea to have him on the song, and it was a collective decision. We're all just like, yeah, this is the right thing to do. It'd be cool to have him on this song. So that way, next time he comes to see us play, we got a duet to do too. So
Yeah.
it was cool, man. It was cool that it all worked out.
Yeah. I commend you on, even though that like they had asked you multiple times to come back, and when you finally decided it, like you went the right route as far as like, you know what, I'm gonna audition. Like I'm sure you could have easily went and said, you know what, no, cancel the auditions. I'm back on this, that, and the third. But the fact that you gave other people a chance, even though you were the last one, like I think at least that's the way I see it. I think that
Yeah.
that was a cool mentality instead of just being like, fuck everyone else, like I'm back.
Yeah, I think being humble is important, especially when, I had turned the gig down twice at that point.
Right.
That would have been really cocky of me to do that. Maybe it would have worked. Maybe it wouldn't. Maybe those guys would have been turned off if I did that shit. You know what I mean?
Right.
For me, I also thought it was important for them to see if maybe somebody did fit the bill. Because who
Right.
knows? I was up against some pretty stiff competition. And in
Yeah.
the back of my mind was, if I'm the one who's supposed to get the gig, let it play out how it was going to play out.
Right. Exactly.
And I'm glad that it worked that way. And it also gave me 2 weeks to really sit with Howard's material.
Yeah.
And listen. Because prior to that, I'd see the video on MTV. I heard the song live. It's not really my bag. I'm not really a quote unquote metalcore guy. And I know people laugh and they're like, what? Everyone's vary with their tastes. I'm not super into metalcore. I don't really like to listen to that type of music. I'm either like death metal, grindcore, classic metal, or like goth, sort of what's the word? Melodic European metal.
Okay.
Never really been into metalcore. So I wasn't really paying attention to what they were doing. So I really had to do my homework. And I'd heard End of Heartache and My Curse, and I was like, those are good songs, pretty poppy. It's all right. And then I heard Arms of Sorrow, and that song, I broke down in tears. I was like, this song right here, I wish I had written it. This is such a good
Yeah.
song. And after falling in love with that song, things just started to click with me. I'm like, oh, I get the appeal. The lyrics are a little more broad. They're a little more personal. We have two separate writing styles, but I got it. And I started to understand and live within those songs, and became obsessed with, how do I attach my own thoughts and feelings to these songs to make it so it's genuine. When I sing them, it's me coming through.
Yeah.
And that was my approach to it. And I still would carry on for years after rejoining, still trying to figure out how to embody myself
Right.
into those songs, which at this point now I'm pretty comfortable with.
Right. I mean, speaking of crying, crying and tears or whatnot, like my favorite all-time favorite songs, I Am Broken Too. That right there was a game changer for me. I'll admit I cried like a bitch on it. What
Yeah.
what was how did that, I mean, what was the inspiration behind it? Like obviously it's a straightforward thing, but was that kind of like your own personal, because that video was showing a couple different things going on there.
Yeah, it's something that I don't drop names to this day because those people are still alive and very private, but it was personal for
Okay.
sure. Um, Within my inner circle of friends and family, and at that point, prior to writing that, a couple years prior to, I was outwardly speaking about mental health. I was sharing stuff on social media. I was, you know, being vulnerable on I think it was MySpace. It initially started on MySpace to Facebook to where I would put up these posts that were about struggling
Yeah.
with, mental health, and it became a passion of mine. So through those conversations and through the tools that I learned through therapy, like therapeutically speaking to friends and family, not actually going to a therapist, that would happen later, but that made me want to help other people. And the song that is written about, the person who it's primary character in that song that I'm speaking to, that happened in real life, of like, I'm calling you out on your bullshit. You're not okay. Like, and I know, how do I know you're not okay? Because I'm not okay too.
Right.
And your behavior and what you're going through is scaring me. So snap out of it. Like, you are not as brave as you think you are. You living this lie and not being vulnerable and honest is actually a weakness. It's actually you being weak.
Yeah.
And when you speak up and you say that you do have a problem and you do need help, that is strong. That's strength. And that conversation happened in real life.
Mhm.
And shortly after that conversation, it was a night of me still struggling with alcohol,
Yeah.
being hammered, like to the point where I couldn't even walk through my front door, probably emotionally reacting to what had happened. Um, And I remember that next morning being hungover and like feeling sad for this person, feeling sad for myself, and just starting to write, I'm broken. And I'm like, I'm broken. I'm broken.
Yeah.
And then it just clicked like, no, this song needs to be about somebody else. Me saying that I'm fucked up. I can see that you're fucked up. How do
Yeah.
I make this a song? And that's where
Yeah.
that came from. It was real life stuff for sure.
Oh yeah, you could. I mean, you completely feel it. Like my favorite lyrics. Or you keep making the same mistakes just to feel alive again. And it's just like holy shit, like that is true if you think about it. Like in addiction, whether you're an alcoholic, whether you're an opiate addict, just whatever. Like we sit here and we try to numb and numb and numb and just do the same shit, hoping that we're gonna feel better. And at the end of the day, it's like, what's the definition of insanity? Doing the
Yeah.
same thing over
Yep.
and over again, expecting a different result.
Yeah. And
And
then
that hit hard.
Yeah, and then sometimes for some people, including myself, the addiction wasn't just in the alcohol or the drugs, it was the drama of falling on your face, being depressed, being dark, and then finding your way back out, addicted to the toxicity of that lifestyle.
Right.
I reveled in it. I reveled in the drama. I reveled in the shitty marriage that I had. I would reveled in like people around me being, you get high off the drama. It sounds really odd to people who don't know what that's like, but you become accustomed to it where you look for a reason to drink and numb out or take that pill, or you're looking for a reason. The woe is me, you play the victim, and it becomes that in itself can become addictive.
Yeah, exactly. So what you guys are doing is great. I mean, the last album that came out was amazing. Before we wrap up, you guys got done doing a new record. When do you expect? Can you talk about that? When are you expecting that to drop?
So I don't know exactly when it'll drop, but I'm gonna guess probably late summer into fall. And
Okay.
I'm super proud of that record. I think anyone who's loved Killswitch in the past will love this too. I think there's definitely more anger and frustration in it. But there's moments of light and hope woven throughout, which is just something I can't help doing. And I'm
Yeah.
confident to say that I think this record is gonna make a big impact on people. And it's taken me a year and a half almost of some real deep soul searching and embodying all the things that I talk about on that record. And it's super important for me
Yeah.
that I got that into this record, and I could stand back and say that I did what I set out to do. And I'm super grateful for that.
I know I'm stoked for it. I can't wait. Like it seems like it's been forever since you guys dropped new music. So I'm like, fuck, man, they need to hurry up and drop another song.
Yeah, I think, a lot of people feel that way, but at this stage in the game, you don't want to put something out that you don't 100% back and believe in. And
Absolutely.
we had to rewrite a lot of stuff because it wasn't up to par.
Yeah.
And I think had we not done that, it wouldn't be the
Yeah.
record that it is
Yeah.
today.
I think it's important because a lot of bands these days and a lot of musicians and different artists and whatnot, like they're just putting out stuff because to keep the momentum going or to keep their fans like, like I listen to all genres of music. Like my playlist is bipolar. You know, my favorite hip hop artist is NF. So for NF, like that dude may drop an album like every 2 years, but when he does it out of nowhere. And it's like he just doesn't just drop music. He even says it like he's like, listen, I drop it, I tour it, and then he's dead silent for like a year and a half. And then he starts, boom, he just drops it again. And I think that's the way to go about it
That's cool.
because
I
it,
respect
it's
that.
it's really, really cool because a lot of people that they just do it just so they can keep the views coming and or this or that. But I honestly think when you do it like that or how you guys do it and whatnot, it makes them like it's everybody's more intrigued. They're like, oh shit, we haven't heard nothing from these guys. Like, all right. So when it does drop, they're all in on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that too. And that's old school. I think we're of that generation where we're not single pushers. We're not. We still make albums. I still want somebody to listen to this album from start to finish. I know it's not going to happen for a lot of people, but we still write that way where from the first song to the last, there's a narrative, there's a story. There's a reason why we put those two songs together. That craft, that art is dying for a lot of performers and artists for whatever reason, but I
Right.
don't think that's ever going to happen to us. We love the crafting of records.
Yeah. You keep doing how you're doing it because how you're doing it is working. So I know that if people don't know where to find you and follow you guys, they're probably living under a rock. But for the ones that I know, and you're getting ready to personally, like you said, you were going to take a little break, but let everyone know where they can follow the band, where they can follow you, where they can
Yeah.
stream the music.
Yeah. So we're on Instagram. I have a page, Jesse_D_Leach, that is a mixture of personal and band. Then I also have a strictly personal page, The Way Back Within on Instagram. That's more poetry and like nature and stuff like that, which I'll still dabble with here and there. But yeah, I have scaled back quite a bit. And yeah, Killswitch is everywhere on every platform, but the Killswitch page is primarily done by management these days, because everyone's just so busy doing our own thing. But when we're on the road and we're active on tour, I'll jump on there and I'll give footage. I'll put up stuff. But when we're not actively touring, it's predominantly just, promotion for the band that management does. But yeah, you can't miss it. And lots of cool things on the way for us and me personally. But yeah, just give me a follow and I'll keep everyone updated with everything, all of my stuff and everything Killswitch related. I definitely will be putting up stuff.
You guys heard it. The links will be in the description. Go follow Killswitch. Go follow Jesse. Show them awesome love. Super excited. Like I said, man, this is probably one of my favorite interviews that I've done just because I love it, man. I love what you guys do. I love what you stand for, the message you guys are putting out. So the opportunity just to be able to sit here for the last, I don't know, shit, hour and a half. It's crazy. It's been that long.
Oh yeah.
It's an honor to be able to do that. So
It was a pleasure. And for anyone listening out there, I can't stress this enough. Be bold, be vulnerable, speak your mind, ask for help. You're never alone. Those phrases I mean from the bottom of my heart, and repeat them to yourself, repeat them to others. Keep this conversation going, whether it's about recovery or whether it's about your maintaining your mental health. We all need each other. You're not alone.
You know what? I'm not even gonna do an outro. I'm gonna end it on that note. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in, and until next time, we're signing off.
Peace.